Chapter 2. Open Book. The next day was better and worse. It was better because it wasn't training yet, and it was easier because I knew what to expect of my day. Mike came to sit by me in English, then he and Chess Club Eric fought over me, and it was nattering. Both boys walked me to class, glaring at each other the entire time like wild dogs squaring off over a T-bone steak. As we passed through the halls, I thought I heard a quiet, muffled voice. I perked up my ears. "Help me," I thought I heard. "She's going to come back. She'll give it to me up the bum this time for sure. Please don't just leave me here, do something." I realized then that it was an innocent thesaurus crying rape from within the clutter of a nearby locker. It was being fucked hard by Stephanie Meyer, who had decided that nattering was a suitable replacement for the word annoying, which it most definitely was not. Since the boys weren't talking, I wondered why she chose this word to describe my irritation with them. But despite that poor innocent book's pleas for salvation, I didn't stop to do anything because I'm a complete asswipe. It was worse because I was awake, and it was another day, meaning that you now have to listen to me complain some more, even though everyone is already fully aware that I am a shit character in every way, shape and form. Oh, and it was also worse because what's-his-face wasn't in school at all. I spent the entire morning worrying about this unimportant being, dreading seeing him at lunch, even though I have never spoken 2 words to him because of his creepy, unnerving stares that make my panties moist for some reason. Oh, right, I peed them because I was so scared of him. Sorry about that. Now it smells like asparagus. I wanted to confront him because his ignoring me definitely meant that he was totally into me. Not only that, but it turned me on in a twisted, unexplainable way that proved what an idiotic, shallow teenager I am. But of course, I was a big chicken, so I said fuck it and spent the night losing sleep over, oh shit, what was his name again? Edmund Colon? I don't even know. Who cares? Thankfully, the kid whose name I can't remember because I never even spoke to him, but who looked at me like a registered sex offender might do, wasn't in school all week, so I could relax, and I even fell into a nice comfortable routine. I did the grocery shopping for the household and the cooking too, setting feminism back another 10 years, since Charlie, for some reason, even though he had lived alone for the most part of 16 years, never learned to cook anything but bacon. All the food in the world, all the TV microwavable dinners and all the Rachel Ray 10-minute recipes, and he still could not cook. I wondered how he was still alive. I responded to a few emails from Mummy using my ancient Fujitsu FM11EX, that we dug up from the backyard during an excavation for dinosaur bones. I read Wuthering Heights again. Then I moped around the house, focusing all my energy on the proper way to go about having no personality or any redeeming qualities while the food cooked downstairs. Then my dad came home from work. He hung his gun belt on the hook. At the sight of it, I took a few minutes to contemplate suicide. One could only hope. He watched TV while I slaved away in the kitchen like the good little wifey, daughter that I was. I asked my dad what he thought about the Cullen family, and he gave me a big long speech about how good and trustworthy and forthright they were in the community. I don't know what about them gave him this strong opinion, but because he liked them, I made up my mind that I liked them too. Too bad that in the next book my dad will hate them because they ruined my life and drove me suicidal. Spoiler alert. Oops, too late. After dinner, I lapsed into the non-being that I am, until it was bedtime and I was brought back to narrate how I finally got some sleep, adding that it was because the wind was quiet. Because if this book missed one page without a mention of the weather, I might cease to exist as a character and it would end with no resolution, no summary, no ending. Oh wait. I spent the weekend as a non-being as well, doing nothing important that is worth mentioning to progress the plot. I was basically on coast, kind of like in the movie Click when Adam Sandler is fast forwarding his life. Only in this scenario I am on coast so that Stephanie Meyer can progress her non-existent plot and get to more descriptions of Edward faster. Hey, I remembered his name. I went to school and mentioned the weather about 15 more times before I even got into the truck to leave. Then it started snowing, and even though I was in a somewhat good mood, I turned into a super emo for the rest of the day. My life really is shit. This constant mention of dreary weather is clearly a metaphor for how much of a waste of space I am, but it isn't even subtle. Stephanie Meyer really is that terrible at writing. The rest of the morning was spent in my non-being form. Then at lunch I saw that Edward was back and I froze where I stood. My ears grew hot as my so-called friends drilled me on what my problem was. I tried to ignore him for the rest of lunch until Jessica asked me who I was staring at, and when she saw who it was, Stephanie Meyer again blatantly gives away Edward's ability to read minds, and he looked at me funny. If I were a big burly man, I would have smacked him upside his butt chin, because burly guys like that don't like being looked at funny, especially by glittery fairies that threaten their manly way of life. But I thought it was awesome that he was giving me the death stare, and I felt oh so special. I almost forgot about the weather until I mentioned it in the next sentence, even though there was no reason for me to bring up the subject. I thought about getting violent with Jessica when I asked her to stop looking at him and she wouldn't listen, but then I realized I was a clumsy weakling and let the idea drop. I took a moment to notice that Jessica seemed to like Mike. This is the love triangle that should have gotten all the hype, not the one between the vampire, the dog and myself in the third book. Oh, did I spoil it again for you? So sorry about that, lovelies. So I went to biology after lunch and decided to ignore the little weirdo that constantly stared at me like I was a giant taco.
Hello,
said a quiet musical voice. I looked up, stunned that he was speaking to me. He was sitting as far away from me as the desk allowed, but his chair was angled toward me. His hair was dripping wet, disheveled. He looked like he'd been whipping it back and forth like Willow Smith. His dazzling face was friendly, open, a slight smile on his flawless lips. But his eyes were careful.
My name is Edward Cullen,
he continued.
I didn't have a chance to introduce myself last week. You must be Bella Swan.
My mind was spinning with confusion. Had I made up the whole thing? He was perfectly polite now. I had to speak, he was waiting. Because if he were just another boy in the school, I would have gladly, and without hesitating, acted like a complete dick to him.
How do you know my name?
I stammered. It seemed obvious that he could read minds, but I couldn't tell because apparently his strange habit of always knowing things was supposed to be mysterious to me. So I pestered him more on the subject of how he knew to call me Bella and not Isabella to drag this chapter out for 10 more pages. Then we did a lab, and my partner and I got it done before everyone else because he was a fucking genius for having been alive for 100 years, and plus, I'd done this lab already and I wanted to show off my mad skills even though I don't really have any. Then we talked some more and he called the author on her own bullshit by making me explain why I moved to Forks despite the fact that I hate it with a fiery sadistic passion. I told him that it was because my mom remarried and the guy moves around a lot, so I moved in with my dad in Forks so that she could travel with him instead of staying at home with me, who we all know is boring and lifeless and sucks the joy out of everyone within a 10-foot radius. Kind of like Hidden Mentor, only not as cool looking. If anyone is familiar with Midnight Sun, Stephanie Meyer's little abandoned temper tantrum, we would know that Edward then realized that I was selfless for having done this small favor for my mom, even though I have no redeeming qualities whatsoever and am not selfless at all, just one of those party poopers that blames everything on themselves. This conversation was held by a series of short 1- or 2-word answers so that it would take about 20 more pages for us to get to the non-existent point of this chapter. More pages were wasted to make room for more inane, nattering conversation, and then the bell rang. He rushed out of the room, and I realized that my panties were wet again. But it wasn't pee this time. Tee-hee. Mike walked me to gym and chattered away. I embarrassed myself in gym class again and all the kids laughed at my handicap of being utterly useless for anything. Then I went out into the parking lot after gym and almost hit a car with my truck. Edward laughed at me because of that. It made my day. Though if it were anyone else I would have had to choke a bitch. Then I went home and wrote scrappy fan fiction about how I was going to fuck his brains out and then give birth to his demon spawn. I do believe that I have now spoiled the entire series for everyone. I am completely satisfied with this.